and a long-term business. So this is the formula right here, and don't worry about jotting this down. You're going to see several screens with this as we move along through it. So the first thing is a quality product or service. You've got to have a product to sell. You got to have some kind of product or service, and it's got to be top quality. Now, it doesn't have to be your own product. It can be somebody else's product, but it needs to be good. I mean, it needs to be something that you would buy. I mean, if you wouldn't buy it, you shouldn't be promoting it. So building a long-term business, you need to have a really good product, something that people are going to get a lot of value from. What kind of products or what kind of services sell on webinars? I know we have a lot of questions to that. Dave, I think a lot of people emailed you for this webinar. You know, hey, can I market this with the webinar? Can I do this with the webinar? Basically, everyone, if it can sell on any other form of direct marketing, it can sell on a webinar. Anything that you see marketed with a traditional seminar, radio, TV, direct mail, sales pages, anything that sells with any kind of direct marketing can be sold with a webinar. Most people ask, can I do this with a webinar? Can I do this with a webinar? And the answer is almost always yes. Now, of course, there's some things that sell better than others, and that's where you need to look at that. But almost anything can be sold on a webinar. So how do you price your product? You know, whether you find someone else's product or you have your own product. How do you price it? Should you sell a low-ticket item or sell a high-ticket item? Well, let's talk about low-ticket items. You looked at my example of the webinar we did where we did 94,000 in sales. Well, that was a $1,000 product. Now imagine us doing the same thing, going through all that effort and selling it as a $97 product or a $50 product. We probably would have had some of the same conversion numbers. However, could have made a lot less money. What we've generally found is your conversion numbers are almost always the same, no matter what your price is, whether it's a $50 product or whether it's a $1,000 product. I mean, obviously, there's going to be slight differences, but higher ticket products generally do really well on webinars. So save the low ticket items for other types of marketing, and then use those leads to get those to your high ticket webinars. Price point, shoot for $299 to $5,000 for webinars. The sweet spot is about $997 to $1,997. And obviously, it's going to differ for your product that you promote as well. So what are some of the products that you can sell or promote on webinars? Well, this is just kind of a small list. Stock investing, money employment, network marketing, insurance, real estate, pets, medical, video games, self-help, counseling, software, divorce, information, weight loss, contractors, referral marketing, coaching and consulting, internet marketing, and much, much more. This is just a small list here. But pretty much kind of back to what I said is there's really not that many products that you can't sell on a webinar. You can pretty much promote almost anything on a webinar.
Joel, you and I have a friend who every month does over $300,000 a month, and he does it with a webinar. And in fact, he doesn't really do any promotion between the month. In other words, during the month, he does no promotion. So like at the beginning of the month, I believe it is, that he does his monthly webinar, and it's a $5,000 product. And he sells over $300,000 a month in webinars. So when Joel says you can sell up to $5,000, we see it happen every day.
Right. And a lot of people think, oh, it's just the get rich, make money type stuff that sells on webinars, but that's not the case at all. In fact, this individual we're talking about is not in the the make money area. It's a completely different market there. So there's some really high-end type products being sold out there on webinars. So all right. So once you've got your quality of product and service, now you've got to have some content. I mean, you've got to have a webinar. You've got to have something that you've got to teach people. So let's talk about the content for that webinar. Well, here's the deal. If you teach something of really high value to people, people will come to know and trust you. And if you over-deliver on your content, then people will know and trust you. And here's the thing that a lot of people get worried about. They say, listen, I don't want to give away my secrets. I don't want to give away the secret sauce on this webinar. But you need to. Don't be afraid to give away the secret sauce. Many people think, if I tell them the secrets, then they're not going to buy my stuff. Well, it's the actual complete opposite. The more you share with people, the more they come to know and trust you and think of you as the expert, and the more people will buy your information. Let's talk about creating a killer presentation. Most people are visual learners, and that's one of the reasons why webinars do so well. I mean, for a while, teleseminars seemed to be kind of the thing. but a lot of those people who are really into teleseminars have migrated over to webinars. When you create a presentation, you really want to create some eye-catching slides, some really professional-looking slides. Here's one of the tips that I highly recommend that you do. Because we're visual learners, you want to put a picture of the person that is speaking. See my picture right over here, guys? Throughout this whole webinar, you've seen my picture there. So I'm speaking, and you see my picture, and then you can almost visualize me sitting there speaking. And so that's one of the techniques about when you create your slides that I highly recommend that you do. You have a picture of the person speaking. And if you do your slides in widescreen, 16 by 9, you know how everyone's getting widescreen TVs and widescreen monitors. You can actually create your slides with widescreen, and it's just a setting in PowerPoint how to do that. It allows you to put more information over here on the side and have your main content over here. So I highly recommend you do your slides in 16 by 9.
Joel, this is very important because I'm actually hiring someone right now to go and change one of my webinars over to 16 by 9. It is a pain in the butt. It's like 160 slides, but I have to change it to a 16 by 9 because when you look at it in the brand new screens, they're all widescreen. So that's a very good tip. I wish I would have known that earlier.
Right, and then when you do a replay later, people, when they maximize it, it looks better because you've done it widescreen already, and almost everyone's getting these widescreen monitors now.
Another good point. That's a very important point. That's true.
Here's a couple things as you're creating your webinars. Avoid too many live demos. Live demos can kill you. So you're sitting there with a web browser, and you're going, and you're browsing this site, browsing that site, and all of a sudden the site's down, and then you've got 1,000 people all waiting for you to get the site down. How many have been on a webinar where that's happened before, where you have to deal with outages and slow page loading? Don't demo live software on a webinar. And I know a lot of people say, well, how can you demo a software on a live without actually doing it live? Well, you can with screen captures. I'll just kind of share an experience. With Keyword Rockstar, that was the webinar that we did this whole last year. One of the webinars that we did, we actually tried to demo the thing live, and it was a disaster because if something will go wrong, if something can go wrong, it will on a webinar. And so you're trying to demo something and it crashes. I mean, obviously you're trying to sell a software program and it crashes right in front of everybody. And that's not what you want to convey out there. So instead, use screen captures. And if you do screen captures, you can actually walk people through your software with screen captures. And many people will think many times they think you're actually live in the software. So a good screen capture program is a program called Snagit. Snagit by TechSmith, and I think it's $50 or so. They have a free demo. Great way for taking screenshots of anything on your screen as you build your presentations.
Hey Joel,
yeah.
I wish I would have known that so much earlier because I don't know if I told you listeners, I did webinars for a number of years. Those webinars were to sell a software product called Send Out Cards, which I highly recommend that everyone own. But send out cards, and I cannot tell you how many stories where for some reason Send Out Cards wasn't doing the thing it was supposed to be doing. Just the most recent one, I was on a big one just here in the Christmas season, and I just couldn't resist it. I had about 300 financial advisors on the webinar, and I went over to Send Out Cards live, and of course this is Christmas, so Send Out Cards is just getting annihilated. That site is just everybody's coming down on it. And it was showing errors. Every time I pushed this button, this error would come up. And it was just terrible. And the worst part about that is that the guy that brought me to the webinar, that we used his list, just made him feel like a schmuck.
Exactly. People were probably dropping off. So the bottom line is you walk people through with screen captures, and you do a different screen for every step. And you get pretty creative with PowerPoint. You do zoom-ins and all kinds of things. So many people, when our keyword, if anyone was on our Keyword Rockstar webinars, feel free to type that you were on there. Many people actually felt we were actually live in the software, and all it was screen captures. So highly recommend that you use a lot of screen captures. Here's another thing, and many of you that connected early, you saw this, use a countdown timer screen. You'll notice that I always start my webinars early, and I have this countdown timer going. And that just really helps people know when they connect a little early, hey, I'm at the right place. I'm at the right place. They've got a countdown. They know exactly when that webinar is going to start. The other thing is have call-in phone numbers. If you're using a service like GoToWebinar, they have call-in phone numbers because not everyone can hear their, sound out of their speakers. People connect to the webinar and they can't figure out how to turn their volume on, but they see this note right here that says, hey, if you can't hear the audio, call into these numbers right here and use the access code. In fact, I always like to put more than just the US numbers. I like to put numbers from around the world, Australia, Canada, Canada, United Kingdom, and put them all. And I have these usually in the first, 7 to 8 slides, so people will know, because obviously if they connect, they can't hear you, but they can read, right? So this is a huge, huge thing when using a service like GoToWebinar. So make sure you can call in numbers. All right, how do you create that presentation? Well, you can obviously use PowerPoint. You can use Keynote if you're a Mac user. And you can, if you don't have any of those and you want to start with something free, you can use Google Docs. Now, Google Docs has a free presentation, just kind of like PowerPoint, but it's free. And it works really nice, and it works right in a web browser. So, those are the 3 different tools for making a presentation. A lot of people think, well, I'm going to do a webinar, I'm going to do like live video. And no, that's not the right approach, because right now the technologies of the net are just not good enough yet to actually stream a lot of live video. There are some ways to embed a little bit of video in your presentation if you want to, but don't think that you're going to sit there with a live camera and sit there and do a webinar for the whole thing. You'll be sorely disappointed if you do that. But here's one last thing. I talked about having really nice slides and all that, but the content is actually much, much more important than a pretty looking slide. I'll give you one example. I did a webinar with a guy, his name's Greg, and it was his webinar he was doing to my list, and all his webinar was he was in a web browser and he'd written some information, and he would just scroll up to the next text, scroll up to the next text. It was a cheesy text on a web browser. And at first I thought, oh man, this is not going to go that well. We actually did over $50,000 in sales. And all it was scrolling up and scrolling up. It was his content, it was what he was saying that was actually much, much more important. However, don't forget, obviously people are visual learners, so keep both in mind as you're developing that presentation. All right, so after you've got your quality content and you've got your whole webinar ready and everything to go, you've got to have some traffic. And this is the part where a lot of people struggle with is, how do I actually get that traffic? How do I get people to actually, show up and visit, even find out about my webinar? So I'm going to talk about traffic here. Now, I could do a 3-hour webinar just about webinar traffic, but we don't have that much time. But there's 2 main types of traffic to your webinars. One is free traffic. The other is paid traffic. Now, I'm going to talk about free traffic right now. 3 different ways of getting free traffic: SEO traffic, affiliate traffic, and JV partner traffic. And this is what I'm going to focus on today, is JV partner traffic. Why? Well, it's the lowest risk, highest return traffic you can get, and I have the evidence to prove it. I highly recommend, if you're just getting started with webinars, and if your product that you're promoting, if there are JVs that have email lists, I highly recommend that you start with this type of traffic. How does it work? Well, basically, JVs, or joint venture partners, will have email lists, and there are all kinds of people that have email lists out there. It's not just the internet marketing crowd. There's all kinds of people that have email lists. JVs will mail out invitations to attend a webinar, and you pay them a cut of the sales. Many times it's 50%, 40%, really depends on what you work with them. The only risk for you is your time involved. There's not a lot of financial dollars involved right up front just to get people, because hey, they've already got the list, they're just emailing out. It's a great way to get started. How do you get these JVs? Well, it's all about the relationships. Okay. First of all, get out of the gimme mindset. I get people all the time that email me all the time and say, hey, would you like to promote my webinar? Would you like to promote my webinar? They're already asking right out of the gate, before I even know who they are, they're asking me to do something for them. Get out of that mindset. Give something first, and then offer something to them. And a lot of people say, well, they won't do a webinar for me if I don't have a list. Well, that's completely wrong. All right, if you have a really good, solid product and have a really good presentation, the smart JVs will know that, and they will promote for you. And then maybe later on, when you do have a list, they'll want something in return. Now, here's one thing, I don't have a slide on this, but if you're looking for how to find JV partners with lists, just go to Google and type in this. Type in the keyword that you're looking for. So if I was in, if I was into, roller skating rings or something like that, I would type in roller skating newsletters, or I would type in anything newsletters, and you will find people with big lists doing that. All I do is just go to Google, type in the keyword, and then the word newsletter, and you'll be able to start amassing a list of people who have all these different newsletters out there. And here's the interesting thing, Dave. A lot of people have lists, but they never do anything with them. They just collect their, customer emails as they take orders for their different products, but they never promote to those lists, or they don't know how to do that. So you come along and you've got this real good product that you can promote, give them a 50% split, or whatever you work out with them. And a lot of times those people are golden because they don't do a lot of promotions to their lists. So they're kind of like fresh buyers.
Are you going to talk about showing them statistics from your previous webinars?
I have some statistics in here for sure, yeah. Okay.
No, what I'm talking about is when you go to approach.
Yes.
Okay,
yes, I will show you guys a good example. In fact, I'll give you a domain, you get a link that you guys can go to where you'll actually see how I show those statistics. It only takes a few JVs to get the ball rolling. It really does, because what happens is you get one or two big JVs, and they have a lot of friends that are also on their list, and they see that, hey, this guy just promoted this webinar, maybe this is something my list would like, and you'll start getting people coming out of the woodwork saying, hey, I want to promote this webinar for you. So it only takes a few just to get the ball rolling. So how hard is it to get people to promote your webinar? Well, it's really just a matter, it's just a matter of asking, but asking the right way and setting up the foundation before you ask. If you just go blindly out there and ask people to promote your webinar, you're going to get a lot of no's. But if you set up the foundation the right way before you ask, and then when you ask, you'll get a higher response rate. In fact, to answer your question you just asked me a few minutes ago, how do I get people onto my, how do I let them know about my webinar? How do I give them my statistics? You want to create a JV invite page. In fact, you can see my JV invite page for Keyword Rockstar. Just go to joelsnews.com/jvinvite.com. Just jot that down. You don't want to go to it right now because you'll be distracted from the webinar. But just write that down, joelsnews.com/jvinvite. You create a page and make it super simple. Listen, Joel Peterson's PPC webinar is earning his JV partners $4 to $8 per click to their targeted list and putting real money in people's pockets. I've got a really short video. It's like 2 minutes or less. Do not make really long videos because most of these JVs, their attention span is pretty short. Get right to the point, and then if you go to that site, you'll see I have all kinds of statistics and testing from our tests and different actual live webinars that we've done. And a lot of these guys, they really don't care what the product is. They care about the statistics. So make sure you have a good JV invite page. So again, jot that down. Make sure you visit that, and feel free to copy me on that as well. So here's the deal. I've done 41 Keyword Rockstar webinars to this date. Here's a question I have for everybody, and feel free to type this into the list here. How many email list owners do you think I had to ask to get those 41? How many people did I have to ask to get those 41? What do you guys think? Ask it in there. We got people saying we got 70, 100. Okay. So here's how many people I had to ask. 41. Okay. 100% of the people who I asked to do a Keyword Rockstar webinar said yes. All right. Now, I didn't go out there and just ask everyone and their dog right at the beginning. I mean, obviously you could do that, but you'll get more no's that way. But you will find a few people. But if you set your foundation right and take a little time, you'll get a lot more yeses in there from your when you ask them to do it. Let me give you a couple case studies real quick of a few JV webinars that I've done. First case study is myself. John Shugart has a product called Keyword Rockstar. Phenomenal product with AdWords and driving PPC traffic. His initial product that he created was a $97 tool. When I saw that product, I knew how really good it was, but I knew it could be a lot better because he had the tool, but he didn't have the kind of the why people needed to use that tool. So I came in and said, listen, let's add a little more value to this tool, and let's change it up a bit. We'll add some training videos and actual purpose to use that tool, and let's turn it into a $997 plus product. We did over $1.5 million in sales. $1 million of that was within 6 months. So, went from that $97 product to a $1,000 product just by adding a little bit more value to it. And the actual tool itself is awesome. It still is awesome. Here's a couple of my JVs that did webinars for me. Dave Winden, this was actually one of the first webinars he had ever done. I approached him and I said, Dave, let's do this Keyword Rockstar webinar. At the end of the day, we did $40,000 in sales. Dave's commission was 25%. He was super excited. He shot me over this email. This was the easiest $9,000 that I ever made. My goal was $5,000, and I nearly doubled that. So, obviously his cut was 25%. We were pretty excited on the results on that. I showed you this case study just a moment ago. Michelle McPherson here, we did a Keyword Rockstar webinar with her. $94,000 in sales. Just a 90-minute webinar. Another case study with Russell. This is actually Russell Brunson. We did $68,000 in sales. Russell's cut was 25% on that. He was super excited to get that as well. So a lot of these partners, they're ecstatic. You do these webinars and they make $20,000 to $30,000 in just a matter of 90 minutes or something. So case study number 2, Dave Foran. Remember that guy at my boot camp? Dave came to my boot camp when I did that. It was brand new, learning all this stuff. He started applied everything that I taught him, and started doing webinars with a guy named Jack Mize. And many of you may have heard of Jack or seen his product, Offline X Factor, another great product that teaches people how to do online marketing for offline businesses. Dave applied my formula exactly. Copied basically everything, my slides and everything, and I gave him to him. I told him to do that. Here's my slides, here's my emails. Just follow this format of the way I do things and apply it to a different product, and that's exactly what he did. And he's now making 5 figures, a month with these methods. So some of you may have seen, if you're on some of these different lists, you may have seen the Offline X Factor webinar going around. A lot of people promoted it, and also Dave has several other clients lined up that he's doing webinars with this next 2011. So, in fact, this was kind of cool. Dave was one of my students, and they were doing so well with his webinar. I said, hey, can I do your webinar to my list? And we just did a quick little webinar and did $21,000 in sales in just a matter of 90 minutes. So it was kind of cool to take one of my students and then actually go through and actually promote for him, just to see the success he's done with that. Here's the thing.
Hey, Joel.
Yeah.
Before we go on, I want to go back to getting JV partners. Not to that slide, but getting JV partners.
Right.
Because today I got an email from a fellow that you and I both know, and he has basically an affiliate manager, or he calls them the public relations manager, or something like that, that sends out an email that says contacting all of these people with lists to do a joint venture teleseminar with them. And he puts all his stats in there and things like that. And it was worded in a way that I actually, when I normally said no, I actually asked him a few questions. In other words, I took the next step with the guy. Right. And the cool thing I liked about that is if you guys want to really scale this, you can have your own affiliate manager. Now, I know for a fact this person was in the Philippines. The person that emailed me was in the Philippines. And so he has a person in the Philippines. He probably pays between $400 to $600 going out and contacting a bunch of list owners. And what that person does is simply sets up a meeting with this person. Just sets up a phone call with this person. So now he's not going out and having to find all these people and having to email them all and having to do all the front end work. All he does is he has appointments throughout the day with people who already have expressed an interest to do a joint venture with him on this teleseminar. I thought that was very powerful.
Yes, and actually, I'm really glad you brought that up because, obviously, when I first started doing this, I was doing kind of everything, finding the people with the lists and everything. But I actually opened up an office in the Philippines this last year. I started out with home workers, people, guys working out of their home. Now, I actually have a physical office out there, and I have a person that all they do is they find potential JV partners for me. That's their only job. And they gather that data and they put it into this thing called HighRise. And I would highly recommend everyone use HighRise HQ or something like it to track all of your leads, your contacts, and your deals, because it allows you to stay organized. It allows you to know who you're talking to when you talk to, Jamie Adams, and you can record all your conversations in there. Basically, this one tool right here has made me hundreds of thousands of dollars that I wouldn't have made if I wasn't as organized. And I'm not really a super organized person, but this tool has really helped me become organized. So I have a person in the Philippines, that's their main job, is they're finding new JVs for me. And then we take the time and we contact people. I don't just send blind emails out to people all the time, but we go in, I find out a little bit about that person, I'll research it, I'll send them a send-out card, or I'll create a quick little video for them if I know that they have a really good list. Now make a personalized effort to contact that person, and that there right alone is all the difference when you're contacting these JV partners. Get some personalization involved, and you'll get a lot more yeses.
Hey Joel, let me interject something there, because in my telesummit business, of course, I have an interviewer that we interview about 13 experts every single month. So we go out to experts all the time asking for their help. And we sent emails in the beginning, and we had some yeses, but then we started using Jive Video Systems. You guys can see it, Jive Video Systems. Don't go there right now, but later on, just write it down, jivevideosystem.com. And we had a custom template made, and then she started recording herself and sending that video along to them as maybe a second step, sometimes even a first step, and our yeses just jumped up dramatically. So sending a little video message is very powerful.
Very, very powerful. So definitely HighRise HQ, guys, get something. There's other systems like it, but this one's very simple. They've got a free 200, you can use a free version of it, 30-day trial. It will pay for itself many, many times. The other thing is, what I want to talk about is how to build a massive list. So every person that registers for a webinar, you should add to your list, right? A lot of people, in fact, Dave, you were a little surprised at this. I think when we were together down in Costa Rica a couple months ago, you asked me, oh, so as you're building this list, as you're doing a lot of these JV webinars, you're building your list with that, and you were a little surprised on that. I've been able to build a very massive list with that, and then the one thing I always make sure that my JV is okay with that. A lot of industries, that's just kind of it's just a known thing. If I do a webinar for you, you do a webinar for me, we're going to capture the different emails, but make sure your JV is okay with that, because sometimes they're not. And so just be straight out honest with people, and when you capture that information that you're going to be marketing to those people. Here's one of the things that can really help. If you use any type of a system where you can say, hey, listen, I'm going to give people, I'll capture your leads, but I'll make sure any promotions that I do those people will do affiliate commissions. You'll always get affiliate commissions for those people. So you have to make sure you're using the right kind of system to do that. I know, Dave, you use a system like that as well.
And guys, what Joel is talking about is you creating a webinar registration page yourself and hooking up into your Aweber and stuff like that, and then giving that to the person to say, hey, drive traffic to this webinar page, we'll sign them up for the webinar.
So they get registered for GoToWebinar, and they get added to your Aweber list or your Infusionsoft list or whatever you're capturing those in. And I'm going to show you guys a tool to do that here in a little bit. So you can build a massive, massive list, and that's one of the best things with running, these kind of systems. Doing JV webinars is you build your own list, and now you have a little more leverage when you want to go out and get more JVs, because people will know that you have a list as well. So now that you've got your targeted traffic, and again, I didn't get to talk about paid traffic and some of these others, we just don't have enough time, but once you've got your targeted traffic, now you've got to add your live webinar or an auto webinar, the actual webinar. We actually do that webinar. Now, let's talk about live webinars. Why would you want to do a live webinar versus like a pre-recorded webinar? Well, the same reason why people would rather attend a live seminar than watch it on TV. You just get real-time learning. People want to be the first to know that information. It's all about the excitement of the event, that the webinar starts at a certain time. You want to be there or you're going to miss it. You have more interaction, you can answer questions, and there can be a fair amount of networking as involved as well. And that's why people go to live seminars. And you can do the same thing with running webinars, with running a live webinar. Live webinars have a higher perceived value. It takes care of the, I'll watch this later issue. I mean, if they know it's only going to be on at a certain time, they've got to be there to watch it. And just, it's a fact, live webinars convert high. They just convert higher. So I'm going to show you guys, though, how I take this concept here in a moment of live webinars and try to automate it, because even though I love doing live webinars, I do it. There's only so much time in the day, right? If you want to scale your business, you got to do
Yes,
something different.
baby, you want to come
So
home?
here's a big question I get. People ask me is, what is the best time to hold a webinar?
I'm so
And it
sorry,
really
baby.
depends on your target market.
Lay
your audience.
down.
If your target audience is, small business
what do you
owners,
feel?
you're
Tell
probably
me
going to catch them
everything.
more during the day. If your target audience is, you're doing a make
Sore?
money at home tech product, you're probably going to catch those people in the evening because they all have jobs during the day and can't watch your webinar. My target market, I'm in the market of teaching internet marketers how to make money, is usually in the evenings. 9 p.m. Eastern is when I do a lot of my webinars. And the days I like to do those are Tuesday,
tell Tata to
Wednesday,
give you
and Thursday. But
two
really, it's going to
aspirins.
depend on you. You'll talk to anyone who does a lot of webinars.
I mean, if you can take it, then
What
it's
about you,
good.
Dave? Do you
But
have
if
certain
like
times
it's
you
really
Well,
shitty,
I
then
really like holding them on Thursday, and it's more because of the promotion schedule. So
maybe
so
you should
Thursday
not
allows me to
go
send
to
an email on
Charleston. Maybe you
Monday.
should stay here.
It'll allow me to send an email on Tuesday,
Yeah.
and then that's when I get the bulk of my signups. And then it will allow me to send one on Thursday
So yeah,
morning.
if you can
So I
take the
didn't hit
credit,
'em
then
day
it's
after
better
day
if you
after day.
take
I
it.
do
But if
Monday,
it's like
Tuesday,
really,
then I
really,
get 'em
really,
one
really
on
bad,
Thursday,
then
and then I might send them an
take
email
an aspirin.
right before it starts to get the maximum
But
amount of people signed up. Now,
maybe,
many of the people that are on this
well, I
webinar
want
are
to work out
independent
before I go,
professionals,
or I
so
can work out
they're
after I come
working
back.
their own
So,
independently owned business
you want me to
during
pick
the
you up
day,
at
so a lot of
5,
them can make it during the day. But like
and then
I
I work
understand
out
your
after I
market
come back?
needs to do it in the evening.
Yeah.
Okie dokie,
So the
baby.
answer is there's no one perfect day now
Love you,
or
baby,
time,
bye.
but if I were to have to pick a day, I would say Thursday is the best. However, I know one guy, he does them Saturday morning, and you wouldn't believe it. He makes a killing on Saturday morning. So there's no really one right answer to that. The numbers will tell. As you start to do them, you'll get an idea of your how many people register, how many people show up. But don't forget international, okay? Because by the way, if there's anyone international, if you're outside of the U.S., feel free to type in the questions area. I'd like to know. Because if you do a webinar at 3 p.m. Eastern, like we did today, if you do a webinar at 3 p.m. Eastern, well, then you're going to have people that can connect in the UK. But if you hold it at 9 p.m. Eastern, well, it's the middle of the night, at that time for them. But so it really depends. So a lot of times you'll want to do 2 webinars, one at 3 p.m., one at 9 p.m. to make sure you catch a broader audience. So there we go. We've got someone in Australia that's right now listening, and they're able to do that because we did a 3 p.m. Webinar like this. So again, don't forget about your international audience. Let's talk real quick about webinar software. What webinar software should you use? Well, the daddy of all webinar software is GoToWebinar. I've used GoToWebinar for a lot of times. I really highly recommend it for doing your live webinars. They raised their price this last year, made it quite a bit more expensive to use GoToWebinar. I think, Dave, you and I were talking about there's some little tricks and stuff to kind of go in and get some cheaper versions. But it really is the granddaddy of doing live webinars. There's just so much that you can do with those. However, there are some people coming up with other systems that work just as well as GoToWebinar. One of them is a GBO conference. DimDim is also another good option as well. And so I don't know if you've used any other solutions besides GoToWebinar, Dave, but for live webinars, I usually stick with this and this right here.
I told you that I got kicked out of my GoToWebinar corporate account just recently, and what I did is I just went online and I just typed in, GoToWebinar corporate account, and found somebody who was offering seats in account, and I paid $650 the whole year. Right now, it's $500 a month. But there's other services like Hot Conference. There's a lot of webinar services out there that you can use.
Let's just clarify, it's $500 a month for the 1,000 user connection. A lot of people don't need that right at the beginning. And they do have free trials as well. But here's the thing, here's the bottom line. No matter what software that you use, it's actually more important that you follow a system. Because you can pretty much take any software and apply a system to it, and it's going to work. Here's my system. This is the system, the exact system that I follow when I do a live webinar. And I don't have a lot of time to go super detailed into this, but it all starts with JB traffic or paid traffic. Goes to a registration page. And then once people register, I send out autoresponder messages reminding them of the webinar. And if I'm using GoToWebinar, I have GoToWebinar send emails out to people. See, a lot of people on this webinar, you probably got emails from Dave, and you probably got emails from GoToWebinar. So you have two sources of people reminding you about the webinar. I go in with a pre-show. So a lot of people that connected early, we have a pre-show running where you can see that countdown timer. Then I have the live webinar running here. I always make sure I do a 1 hour email blast before that webinar. And we didn't do it this time, but we can do a voice or text blast reminding people about that webinar. Then once people have attended that webinar, I've got all different categories that they fall into. People that attended the webinar but didn't purchase, attended non-buyers, attended people that came to the webinar and left early, or people that didn't show up. And my whole process is to get them over to this customer list. So I use a whole system. You can pretty much apply any software out there, modify your own system, but it doesn't really matter so much what webinar software you're using as long as you connect, other people connect, and they have a good experience. But it's more important that you actually follow the system. So, like I said, I don't have real details. I don't have time to go into a lot of details of that system, but I do want to share one thing for you. And right here, this one thing right here is going to be your worth you coming onto this webinar today. Here's one of the tips to get a super high attendance rate on your webinars. The industry average is about 20%. Some people get even less than that. I average 35 to 45%. My highest has been 64%. I showed you the screenshot earlier. This was a 43% attendance rate. Here's my what I call the 321 M1 rule. The 321 M1 rule. Email reminder 3 days before the webinar. Reminder 2 days before the webinar. Reminder 1 day before the webinar. Reminder the morning of the webinar, and 1 hour before the webinar. It's my 321 M1 rule. You'll just write that down, jot that down. 321 M1 rule. This right here is a really good strategy for getting a super high attendance rate. Combined also with having that countdown page that I already talked about. Now here's the other thing. That email reminder, if you're doing JV webinars, you have your JV partner send that 1 hour before email. That makes a huge, huge difference. So 321 M1 rule for getting a high attendance rate on your webinars. Start your webinar 1 hour before. I just mentioned that. Have a countdown timer running. But here's the thing. When you start that countdown timer, those of you that connected early, you couldn't hear us talking. You could not hear Dave and I talking until about 10 minutes to, because that's when we actually hit the broadcast button. Hit the broadcast button about 10 minutes before that. But before that, all you saw was this countdown timer. So if your email goes out 1 hour before and you start this pre-webinar 1 hour before, people log in and boom, the webinar just opens right up. So this one strategy alone right here has made a huge difference in the attendance rate. Here's the other thing. Your audio must be clear and loud. You want to make sure you use a USB condenser mic. I recommend for $77 on Amazon, you'll get a Snowball mic. Just type in Snowball mic. There's other mics as well that you can get, but make sure that USB condenser mic is what you get. Makes a huge, huge difference in calling in on the phone. Now, here's the other thing. When you're doing your webinar with a mic, make sure that you're wearing a pair of headphones and that you have your speakers turned off. Like actually, I can hear a little background noise, and I think it's coming from your side, Dave. So I hear a little background noise in the back, so someone must have their speakers turned up somewhere in your office. So what you need to do is make sure all your speakers, all your noisemakers are off, wear a pair of headphones, and make sure you're talking into that mic, and you'll have a really clear audio sounding. That makes a big difference for people. So now Dave's scrambling around making sure he turns off that background noise somewhere, right? All right, let's talk about auto webinars. So we talked a lot. I talked a lot about live webinars. Let's talk about how you can really scale this business model. As your business model, as your webinars grow, you're going to want to scale it. But the problem is there's only one Wednesday at 9 p.m. Right? So what if you wanted to hold 3 webinars on Wednesday at 9 p.m. You can't do that with live webinars. You need to scale it, and that's where you want to start running auto webinars. So what if you could run a webinar every night at 9 p.m.? Wouldn't that be pretty cool? I mean, I like to spend a lot of time with my family, so I personally don't like doing a lot of webinars in the evening. I've done a lot of them, though, but part of my goal is to switch to a lot more auto webinars. What if you could do a webinar every day at 9 a.m., 3 p.m., and at 9 p.m., or say you wanted to run a webinar that ran every 10 minutes. There's people that want to do that. You can if you run auto webinars. Now, see this picture right here? I don't know if you can see me. This is me on a raft, and actually Dave is also on this raft too. Can you guys pick Dave out right there? There's Dave right there. But can you see me on the raft, on the back of the raft? Obviously, I'm the guy steering the raft. And we were going down this rapid. We were down in Costa Rica. This was just back in November. We were going, what was this rapid called? It's called Robin Hood or something, Robin Hood Rapid. It dumps people off.
It's called Very Scary.
Very scary. And so, but notice how I'm sitting here smiling at the back of this raft. Let me tell you the real reason why I was smiling on this trip down in Costa Rica while we were having a blast. The real reason I was smiling is I was actually running an auto webinar. The day we were on that rafting trip, I had a webinar running while we were having fun. And we did $15,000 in total sales on that webinar. My cut was 50% of that. I more than paid for that trip to go down to Costa Rica, and it was all done on autopilot. You were there, Dave. You remember the day that I did that, auto webinar. I didn't have to do anything. It just ran by itself. So just to continue on with that story, after we got through the rapid, we flipped over, and there I am. I'm still smiling. You can't see me, and if any of you wonder, yes, my sunglasses stayed on. So. This is another story for another day, but
we joked about this with Joel because his sunglasses cost what, like $60?
No, $350.
$350. Who buys $350 pair of sunglasses and then goes down to class 5 rapid? That's crazy.
Yeah, well, they stayed on. Still got them. But the bottom line is, I was able to have a lot of fun and run these webinars on autopilot. And, that big motorhome trip that I told you guys at the beginning that I'm taking for a month. My business is going to be pretty much run on autopilot while I'm gone. So, if done right, the webinar will feel like a live event. All right, if you do it right. The actual event is more important, though, than making people feel like it's live. You're not in the business to try to trick people. You should be more in the business of actually creating the event, the excitement of the event. But the bottom line is, no matter what, most people are going to think it's live anyway, no matter what you do. So if you do it right, people will get that feeling, and you'll have just as much conversion as you do on a live webinar. And that's how you scale things. So here's another really cool thing that you can do. How about this? If you're into JV webinars, what about doing custom auto webinars with your JV partner? You have the main webinar already recorded, and then all you do is have your JV partner record something for the beginning and for the end of the webinar. And then you just merge the video together and play it back in an auto webinar. And like I said, it's a beautiful way to do it because number 1,